So, cousins, Pharrell Williams is trending once again, but this time it has nothing to do with music. It has everything to do with a sneaker, Louis Vuitton, Vans, and a debate that has people asking a very simple question. At what point does inspiration become imitation? Hey, cousins, welcome back to the crib. Your favorite cousin Moni here. I hope you are feeling good on this beautiful morning. Please do me a favor and tap that like button, hype this video, and share it with someone you love as all engagement helps the channel prosper. Now, let's get back to the story because Pharrell recently unveiled a new sneaker for Louis Vuitton called the Combi. The shoe is part of Louis Vuitton's upcoming collection, and almost immediately, social media had something to say. Because when people saw the shoe, they didn't see Louis Vuitton, they saw Vans. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't understand why. Because it's when I first saw the sneaker, my immediate reaction was, baby, these are Vans. These are Vans. I'm a Vans wearer. I've owned multiple pairs throughout my life, my childhood, in high school, as an adult. The checkered slip on ones, they hate to see me coming. I mean, the silhouette is recognizable, the shape is recognizable, the overall aesthetic is recognizable. So when people began making side by side comparisons online, I wasn't really shocked. And apparently, Vance wasn't shocked either. Maybe they were confused, but they weren't shocked either because the company initially jumped into the conversation by commenting, "Oh, bet," under Pharrell's post. Now, depending on who you ask, that was either a playful shade or a warning shot. But Vans didn't stop there. They later doubled down and referenced lyrics from Mr. Me Too. You know, the Clipse and Pharrell record that famously criticized copycats and people who borrow styles from others. They were calling out Lil Wayne on that record. Yeah, that's where this story became bigger than just a sneaker because now the conversation wasn't simply about whether the shoe looked like Vans. The conversation became about Pharrell himself. And the irony wasn't lost on anybody because here's a man who helped create one of the most famous records about people copying styles and trends, and now he's being accused of doing the exact same thing. And what's interesting is that all of this is happening right before Louis Vuitton's men's spring summer 2027 showcase. I believe there's a presentation scheduled to air on YouTube later today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, meaning even more eyes are going to be focused on Pharrell than usual and what he's doing creatively at Louis Vuitton. So, whether the brand intended for this to happen or not, this sneaker conversation has become part of the lead up to one of the company's biggest fashion events of the year. Now, before we go any further, it is important to note that this isn't the first time Pharrell has found himself in this type of conversation because either earlier this year or last year, people were saying something similar about Louis Vuitton sneakers, the LV Buttersoft. Many sneaker enthusiasts looked at the shoe and immediately compared it to the Nike Cortez. Again, Pharrell and Louis Vuitton found themselves facing accusations that they were taking a recognizable silhouette and giving it a luxury quote unquote makeover. And supporters argued that the shoe was simply inspired by vintage running sneakers. Critics argued that it looked too much like a Cortez to ignore. So it's the same story essentially. Because now we're hearing the exact same argument all over again with Vans. But the difference is this time the reaction seems louder, partially because Vans publicly joined the conversation, whereas Nike didn't say anything about the Cortez comparison. And people have begun asking larger questions about Pharrell's design philosophy. Now, one of the more interesting people to weigh in was Tyler, the creator. Tyler came to Pharrell's defense by arguing that Vans doesn't own the silhouette. And now it makes sense Tyler's coming to his defense. Tyler loves Pharrell. Tyler loves the clip. So not shocking he's defending this. But his point was that low profile deck shoes existed before Vans and that similar designs have existed for decades. And historically speaking, Tyler isn't wrong. Vans did not invent every aspect of that shoe shape. The issue is that most people aren't looking at design history. Most people are looking at what is directly in front of them. And when the average person sees the LV Combi, their brain immediately goes to Vans. Again, when I first saw the shits, I said, baby, those are Vans. So that's why this debate is existing, because legal ownership and public perception aren't always the same thing. Now, I also think it's important to acknowledge that Vans and hip hop have a deeper relationship than some people realize, because when people hear Vans, they often think of skate culture first, and that's fair. But hip hop played a role in expanding the brand's reach as well, whether you know that or not. Back in 2006 or before that, the Pack, there's a group from the Bay, I believe, they released Vans, a song that became a cultural phenom. The record wasn't intended to be a commercial for the company, but it absolutely helped introduce the brand to a wider audience and a new generation of listeners. The situation became so controversial that MTV initially refused to air the video because they viewed it as advertising. Of course, fans didn't see it that way. They saw it as a regional hit record celebrating something people genuinely wore, especially from that area. And over the years, more hip hop artists embraced the brand, and later Tyler the Creator and Odd Future helped introduce Vans to an entirely new audience of young fans. So when Tyler weighs in on this conversation, he's not speaking as some random observer and someone who loves Pharrell. Granted, he's speaking as someone who loves Pharrell, but he's someone who had his own history with the culture surrounding the shoe. And that's part of why this debate has become so interesting, because we're not just talking about a sneaker, we're talking about a silhouette that means different things to different communities. Now, here's where I think the conversation gets really interesting, because I don't think the bigger story is whether Pharrell copied Vans. I think the bigger story is how we define innovation. Let's talk about that. For years, Pharrell has been celebrated as one of the most stylish and influential people in hip hop culture, and rightfully so, rightfully so. We're talking about someone whose fingerprints are all over music, fashion, skate culture, streetwear, and luxury fashion. There's the Billionaire's Boy Club, the ice creams, the bait era, the colorful skate aesthetic, the blending of luxury and streetwear. Pharrell influence is undeniable. No one can take that from him. There are generations of artists, athletes, and designers who were inspired by him. Everyday people were inspired by him. But if we're being completely honest, Pharrell's greatest strength has never been creating something from absolutely nothing. His genius has always been in the remix, taking one thing and introducing it to another audience, taking ideas from one world and translating them into another. And that's not coming from a negative place. I think that's just what it is. Also, in hip hop, we see that as well. Hip hop has been built on sampling. Like, that's a good part of what hip hop is. Hip hop was built on flipping records. Hip hop was built on taking something familiar and giving it a new perspective. We even see it with Dapper Dan. That's a whole nother conversation, but you get my drift. And when I look at Pharrell's career, that's what I see: a cultural translator, someone who understands how to connect worlds, which brings us to Louis Vuitton. Because I think people are comparing Pharrell and Virgil in ways that may not be entirely fair. Because Virgil was different, y'all. Virgil challenged the system, Virgil changed the rules, Virgil challenged what luxury could look like. Whether people loved his work or hated it, there was no denying that he was trying to move the conversation forward. Virgil wasn't just redesigning products, he was redesigning ideas. And because of that, his impact at Louis Vuitton felt revolutionary. Pharrell feels different, not worse, just different. If that's the best way to explain it, I don't know. But I don't think Louis Vuitton hired Pharrell to come in and tear the building down. I don't think they hired him to completely reinvent the brand. I think they hired him because he represented continuity. He understood streetwear, he understands luxury, he understands celebrity culture and music, and he understood Virgil too. So most importantly, he already had the trust of the audience Louis Vuitton was trying to reach. So, from a business perspective, that makes perfect sense, especially after losing someone as important as Virgil, because let's be honest, most luxury brands don't actually want a revolution every season. They want evolution at best. They want recognizable product, recognizable ideas, recognizable aesthetics, and that's where Pharrell fucking thrives. He's creative, he's culturally fluent, he's influential, but I don't think he's the type of designer who wants to destroy the old world and build a completely new one. I think he's the type of designer who takes existing worlds and connects them together. And I think sometimes that's brilliant, sometimes that's controversial though. And that's why we're having this conversation today because while I understand Tyler's argument that Vans doesn't own the silhouette, I also understand why people are looking at the Combi and saying, come on now, be so fucking for real. Both things can be true. The design can be part of a longer footwear history, and it can also strongly resemble a Van shoe. Those ideas don't cancel each other out. At the end of the day, whether you call it inspiration, reinterpretation, homage, remixing, or imitation, it probably depends on how much benefit of the doubt you are willing to give Pharrell. What nobody can deny, though, is that he has become one of the most influential cultural figures of the last 3 decades. The irony is that the same thing that made Pharrell successful, his ability to remix culture, is now the very thing people are attempting to debate. And maybe that's why this story has legs, because it's not really about a sneaker, it's about originality, it's about influence, it's about luxury fashion, it's about who gets credit for ideas. And it's about whether being innovative means creating something entirely new or simply showing us something familiar in a way we've never seen before. And judging by the reactions online, people are still trying to figure out where Pharrell falls on that spectrum. So, cousins, let me know your thoughts. I'm done rambling. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Remember to hype this video, like this video, and share it with somebody you love. I would greatly appreciate that so much. Enjoy the rest of y'all day. Y'all be safe. And I will catch y'all in my next one. Later.
Hey cousin, who you chilling with?
I'm chilling with MONIE.